The transport shuttle hummed beneath my feet as we descended through the amber clouds of Xylos 7. I remember that vibration distinctly, the way it traveled up through my boots and settled in my chest like a second heartbeat. It was my first off-world assignment as a cultural observer for the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps, and I'd spent the entire 3-week journey from Earth reviewing every piece of data we had on the Xylosian civilization. They were ancient. I mean truly ancient, in a way that makes human history look like a blink. Their recorded civilization stretched back over 200,000 years. They'd achieved spaceflight when our ancestors were still figuring out how to chip rocks into spear points. They'd watched stars die and others be born. And now, after all that time, they had finally agreed to formal diplomatic relations with humanity. The window beside my seat showed the capital city, Vexar Prime, unfolding beneath us like a living organism. The architecture was impossible to describe in human terms, structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape, their surfaces shifting between translucent and opaque as light played across them. Colors I didn't have names for pulsed through the buildings like blood through veins. First-time observer, the voice came from across the aisle. Senior diplomat Marcus Webb, a man who'd spent 30 years navigating the complexities of interspecies relations. His face carried the particular kind of weariness that comes from too many close calls and not enough sleep. "Yes, sir," I said, turning to face him. He nodded, studying me with eyes that had seen too much. "Good. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless spoken to, and whatever you do, don't make eye contact with the guards." I blinked. The guards. "You'll know them when you see them." He turned back to his window, and something in his tone told me the conversation was over. The shuttle settled onto the landing platform with barely a whisper. The hatch hissed open, and the air that rushed in was warm and carried a scent I couldn't place, something between ozone and honey, with an undertone of electricity. I stepped out onto the platform and got my first real look at Xylosian architecture from ground level. The platform was alive, literally. The surface beneath my feet rippled slightly, adjusting to the weight of each step. Small bioluminescent organisms dotted the edges, pulsing in rhythms that seemed almost musical. In the distance, I could see the diplomatic center, a massive structure that looked like it had been grown rather than built, its spires reaching toward the sky in gentle curves. And then I saw the guards. They stood at intervals along the pathway leading to the main building, motionless as statues. Tall, easily 8 feet, with elongated limbs and heads that seemed too small for their bodies. Their skin had a metallic sheen like burnished bronze, and their eyes were completely black, with no visible pupil or iris. When they moved in perfect synchronization, like parts of a single machine. "Don't stare," Marcus murmured beside me. His voice was barely above a whisper. "They don't like it." I forced my gaze away, but I could still feel them watching. Not just watching, studying. There was a weight to their attention that I'd never experienced before, a pressure against my consciousness that made my skin prickle. The walk to the diplomatic center took 15 minutes. Every step felt measured, observed. The Xylosian officials who greeted us at the entrance were shorter than the guards, more compact, with skin that shifted through subtle color patterns as they spoke. Their language was a series of clicks and hums that my translator earpiece converted into halting English. "Welcome, representatives of Earth. We are honored by your presence. Please follow." The interior of the building was vast. Great halls stretched in every direction, filled with Xylosians going about their daily business. They moved with an efficiency that bordered on mechanical, each individual knowing exactly where they needed to be and when. There was no wasted movement, no idle chatter. Everything was purposeful. I noticed something odd as we walked. The Xylosians we passed would pause briefly, turn toward us with those black, unreadable eyes, then continue on their way. It wasn't hostility. I'd seen enough hostility in my training videos to recognize it. This was something else. Curiosity, maybe, or assessment. "You're noticing," Marcus said quietly. Good. Most first-timers are too overwhelmed to notice. What are they doing? I asked. Measuring, evaluating, determining threat levels. He kept his eyes forward. It's automatic for them, they don't even think about it. We reached a smaller chamber, more intimate than the vast halls. A circular table dominated the center, its surface shimmering with images and data that I couldn't quite make out. Several Zalosians sat around it, their positions suggesting hierarchy. One in particular, larger than the others, with patterns of deep crimson rippling across its skin, clearly held authority. Senior Diplomat Webb, the crimson one said. Its translator emitted a voice that was surprisingly warm. We have been expecting you. Please sit. Marcus took his seat with practiced ease. I followed suit, trying to hide my nervousness. The surface of the chair seemed to mold itself to my body, adjusting until I was perfectly comfortable. It was unsettling. I trust your journey was pleasant, the Crimson Zalosian continued. We have prepared quarters for your delegation. You may rest and acclimate before formal negotiations begin. That's very gracious, Marcus replied. But I wonder if we might begin with a brief discussion of protocol. My understanding is that there have been changes to the standard procedure since our last communication. The Crimson Zalosian's skin shifted to a deeper shade of red. Changes? Yes, there have been changes. I felt the temperature in the room drop slightly. Something was wrong. I could see it in the way Marcus's shoulders tensed, the barely perceptible shift in his posture. May I ask what those changes entail? Marcus's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. The Crimson Zalosian was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, the warmth in its voice had vanished, replaced by something cold and clinical. One of your kind attempted to interfere with our internal affairs. A human named Tessa Chen, attached to the exploratory vessel Horizon. She violated our sovereignty and our laws. My blood went cold. Tessa Chen. I knew that name. She'd been part of the first contact team that had established preliminary relations with the Zalosians 5 years ago. A scientist, brilliant and passionate, known for her work in xenobiology. What happened? Marcus asked. His voice had gone very quiet. She was found in a restricted area, the Crimson Zalosian said, attempting to communicate with a member of our subordinate caste. This is forbidden. The punishment is clear. Subordinate caste, I blurted out before I could stop myself. You have castes. The Crimson Zalosian's gaze shifted to me. I felt the weight of those black eyes like a physical pressure. The hierarchies are the foundation of our society, it said. All Zalosians understand their place. The functions of each caste are essential to the whole. Your species, I understand, does not operate in this manner. This is why your representative failed to comprehend the severity of her actions. Marcus cut in quickly. What happened to Tessa Chen? Another pause. The Crimson Zalosian's skin had gone almost black. She was executed according to our laws. Her body was returned to your vessel. The room swam around me. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to focus. Tessa Chen, executed just like that. Marcus's face had gone pale, but his voice remained steady. You killed a human, without consultation, without giving us the opportunity to negotiate. There is nothing to negotiate. The law is absolute. All who violate the hierarchies face the same punishment, regardless of species. I saw something flash across Marcus's eyes. Not anger exactly, something colder. I see, he said. Thank you for your transparency. We will need time to process this information and communicate with Earth. May we retire to our quarters? Of course. The Crimson Zalosian gestured toward the door. Your quarters have been prepared. You will be escorted. We stood and I followed Marcus out of the chamber. The guards fell in around us, their movements silent and synchronized. I could feel them watching, evaluating, measuring. Marcus didn't speak until we were inside our quarters and the door had sealed behind us. The room was spacious and comfortable, with a large window overlooking the city, but I barely noticed any of it. "Tessa Chen," I said. "She's dead, they killed her." Marcus walked to the window, staring out at the alien sky. "Yes. They just executed her like it was nothing." "Yes. And we're supposed to just, what, negotiate, forgive them." He turned to face me. For the first time, I saw the true depth of his expression, not anger, but something that looked almost like sorrow. "No," he said, "we're going to do something else entirely. But first, you need to understand something about the Xylosians." "I'm listening." Marcus walked away from the window and sat down heavily on one of the chairs. His age suddenly showed in every movement. "The Xylosians have been spacefaring for over 200,000 years," he said. "In that time, they've encountered exactly 6 other intelligent species. Every single one of them is either extinct or reduced to a state of subservience." "I don't understand." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "They have a fundamental belief, the hierarchies. They believe that the universe operates on a strict hierarchy, with the strongest species at the top and everyone else beneath them. They've never met a species that challenged that belief. Until now." "Us?" "Us," he confirmed. "Humanity is the first species they've encountered that doesn't fit neatly into their hierarchical structure. We're too unpredictable, too chaotic, and that terrifies them." "Tessa Chen was executed for breaking their laws," I said. "How is that being unpredictable?" Marcus shook his head. "They executed her because they wanted to see what we would do. They're testing us, trying to figure out where we fit in their hierarchy. If we accept the punishment, we're acknowledging that we're beneath them. If we retaliate, we're acknowledging that we're threats to be eliminated. And if we do something else?" He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "That's the question, isn't it? What do you think a species should do when another species kills one of their own without justification?" I paused, trying to find the right words. "I think we should show them that we can't be pushed around, but I also think we shouldn't start a war over it." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's exactly what our leadership decided, but they also realized something else. Something that makes this situation both more difficult and more dangerous." "What?" He stood up and walked toward the window again. In the distance, I could see a massive structure rising from the cityscape. A building unlike the others, stark and severe, with no windows and walls that seemed to absorb light. "That building," Marcus said, pointing, "that's the judicial chamber, and there in the square in front of it, you see that platform." I looked closer. There was indeed a platform, elevated above the surrounding area. Dark stains marred its surface. "The execution platform," I said. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Yes, they executed Tessa Chen there in full view of the public. It was a demonstration, a lesson." "A lesson in what?" Marcus turned to face me. "In what happens when you violate the hierarchies. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't possibly understand, is that every action has consequences. And Tessa Chen's execution just created a consequence they never saw coming." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "There's a human ship nearby," Marcus said. "Not military, not diplomatic, something else. And they're going to do something that the Xylosians will never expect." "What are they going to do?" He smiled again, and this time there was something in his expression that I didn't entirely understand. Something that looked almost like pride. "You'll see," he said. "Tomorrow, for now, get some rest. Tomorrow will be long." He left me standing at the window, staring out at the alien city, wondering what kind of lesson humanity was about to teach the universe. I lay in my quarters, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. Tessa Chen was dead. A human being executed by an alien civilization for the crime of, what? Talking to someone. Breaking a law she couldn't have known existed. The room was too quiet. Back on Earth, there was always noise, the hum of traffic, the chatter of neighbors, the distant sounds of a world that never truly stopped. Here, the silence was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat, the rush of blood in my ears. At some point in the early morning, I gave up on sleep and walked to the window. The city was still alive, pulsing with those strange bioluminescent lights. Zalosians moved through the streets below, going about their business with that same mechanical efficiency. None of them looked up. None of them seemed to care that they'd just killed a human being. I thought about Tessa Chen. I'd never met her, but I'd read her research. She'd been brilliant, passionate, the kind of scientist who pushed boundaries and asked the questions everyone else was afraid to ask. She'd wanted to understand the Zalosians, really understand them, not just their technology and their culture, but their hearts, their minds, what made them tick. And they'd killed her for it. My comm unit buzzed. A message from Marcus. Breakfast in 30 minutes, we have things to discuss. I showered and dressed, trying to ignore the way my hands shook slightly. The accommodations were comfortable, more comfortable than I'd expected. The water was warm, the towels soft. The clothing provided a simple jumpsuit in a deep blue that seemed to shift slightly in the light, was more comfortable than anything I owned back home. I found Marcus in the dining area, a small room with a table that seemed to grow out of the floor. He was drinking something that steamed and smelled faintly of cinnamon. "Tea," he said, gesturing to a cup at my place. "They make it from some kind of root. It's not bad once you get used to it." I sat down and took a cautious sip. It was surprisingly good, earthy and sweet, with a hint of something I couldn't identify. "What happens today?" I asked. Marcus set down his cup. "We attend the formal reception, meet with their leadership, go through the motions of diplomacy while we wait." "Wait for what?" He glanced at the door, then back at me. "For the Zalosians to realize what they've done." Before I could ask what he meant, the door chimed. A Zalosian entered, a different one from yesterday, smaller, with skin that shifted between pale green and light blue. "Senior Diplomat Webb," it said. "The reception will begin in 1 hour. Your presence is requested in the Grand Hall." "Thank you," Marcus said. "We'll be there." The Zalosian paused, and I had the strange sense that it was studying me. Those black eyes seemed to look right through me, reading something I couldn't hide. "You are frightened," it said. It wasn't a question. I opened my mouth to deny it, but Marcus spoke first. "Of course she's frightened. She's a young observer in a new environment far from home. That's natural." The Zalosian tilted its head. "Frightened. Yes, that is understandable. We have observed that your species experiences fear more intensely than most. Perhaps that's because we're more aware of what we have to lose," I said, before I could stop myself. The room went very still. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. The Zalosian's skin shifted through several colors in rapid succession. "You are also bold," it said. "This is unexpected." "Forgive my colleague," Marcus said smoothly. "She's still adjusting to your culture. There are many things we're learning about each other, yes." The Zalosian studied me for another long moment, then nodded. "Yes, learning. That is the purpose of diplomacy. I will return in 1 hour." It left, and the room felt suddenly lighter. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "That was foolish," Marcus said quietly, "but also useful." "Useful?" He smiled. "You confirmed something I suspected. They're not used to being challenged. They expect fear, submission, obedience. When you gave them something different, they didn't know how to react." "What does that mean?" "It means they're not as confident as they pretend to be." He stood up. "Now finish your tea. We have a reception to attend." The Grand Hall was exactly what its name suggested, massive, sweeping, filled with Zalosians in what I assumed were their formal attire. Their skin shifted in complex patterns, like living tapestries. The colors seemed almost to tell a story, though I couldn't read it. Marcus and I were led to a place of honor near the front of the hall. The crimson Zalosian from yesterday, I'd learned its name, was Vexar stood on a raised platform, its skin pulsing with deep reds and golds. "Welcome," Vexar said. "We gather today to celebrate the beginning of formal relations between our civilizations. This is a momentous occasion, a bridge between worlds, a testament to the power of communication." It spoke for nearly 30 minutes. The words were beautiful, poetic even, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was listening to a speech that had been rehearsed, practiced, perfected. There was no spontaneity in it, no genuine emotion. Everything was calculated, measured, controlled. Marcus listened with an expression of polite interest, nodding at appropriate moments. I tried to do the same, but my mind kept wandering back to Tessa Chen, to the execution platform, to the way the Zylosians had killed her without hesitation. As the speech continued, I noticed something odd. Several Zylosians in the crowd were looking at Marcus and me in a different way than the others. Their skin was shifting in patterns I hadn't seen before, dark spots that spread and receded, like ripples in a pond. "They're nervous," Marcus murmured, barely moving his lips. "Look at their skin. That pattern is a fear response." "Fear," I whispered back. "What are they afraid of?" "Us, our response. They killed one of us, and now they're waiting to see what we'll do." "But we're not going to do anything," I said. "That's what you said. We're going to negotiate, show them that we can be reasonable." Marcus smiled, a thin expression that didn't reach his eyes. "That's what they think we're going to do, but they're learning just as we are." Vexar finished its speech, and the hall erupted in what I assumed was applause, a series of clicking sounds that echoed off the walls. I joined in, trying to look appropriately appreciative. The reception that followed was a blur of introductions and meaningless conversation. Zylosians approached us with questions about Earth, about human culture, about our history. I answered as best I could, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were assessing me, measuring me, fitting me into their hierarchical structure. "Your species has such a short history," one of them said. It wasn't an insult, it was a simple statement of fact. "Less than 1,000,000 years of existence. How have you progressed so far in such a short time?" "Adaptability," I said. "We're good at adapting to new situations." The Zylosian skin flickered through a rapid sequence of colors. "Adaptability, yes, this is a concept we are learning to appreciate." "How did you survive?" I asked. "What happened to the species you encountered before us?" The Zylosian paused. Its skin went still, a uniform gray that I hadn't seen before. "Survival," it said slowly, "requires understanding. Understanding the hierarchies, understanding your place within them. We have always understood our place. It has allowed us to persist." "But what about the others?" I pressed. "The species that didn't survive?" They did not understand. The Zylosian's voice had lost its earlier warmth. "They challenged the hierarchies. They failed. This is the way of things." I opened my mouth to respond, but Marcus cut in smoothly. "I think that's an interesting perspective," he said. "One that we'll have plenty of time to discuss in the days ahead." The Zylosian seemed to relax slightly. "Yes, in the days ahead. That is the purpose of diplomacy." It moved away, and Marcus turned to me with a warning look. "Don't push too hard," he said quietly. "They're not used to being questioned." "They killed Tessa Chen," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "And they act like it's nothing, like she was just a mistake." "To them she was," Marcus's voice was heavy. "But we have to remember they don't understand us. Not really. They see us through their own filters, their own beliefs, and right now they think they have us figured out. Because we're not fighting back. Because we're not reacting the way they expect." He looked toward the center of the hall, where Vexar was surrounded by other high-ranking Zylosians. "They expected anger. They expected threats. They expected us to demand revenge and start a conflict that they would win. But we're not doing any of that." No, Marcus's smile returned, and this time there was something different in it. We're doing something they never anticipated. Which is what? He glanced at his wrist, at a simple black band that I'd always assumed was just a watch. We're playing the long game, and by the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late. The rest of the day was a blur of formal events. I met dozens of Xylosians, each one asking the same questions, expressing the same polite curiosity, revealing nothing of their true thoughts. I found myself studying them, watching for the patterns of skin color that seemed to betray their emotions. They were good at hiding. The patterns were subtle, easily missed if you weren't paying attention, but I was paying attention. Late in the evening, we returned to our quarters. I was exhausted, my head pounding from the effort of processing 100 new impressions. Marcus seemed unaffected, moving with the same measured calm he'd maintained all day. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow will be interesting." "Interesting how?" He smiled. "You'll see." I slept this time, a deep and dreamless sleep that felt like falling into a void. When I woke, the room was brighter, the window showing a city bathed in pale amber light. Marcus was waiting in the dining area, but he wasn't alone. A Xylosian stood beside him, one I didn't recognize, its skin a pale silver that seemed to shimmer. "Ah, you're awake," Marcus said. "This is Coral there. Well, let's call them a friend." The Xylosian Coral inclined its head. "I am honored to meet you. I have heard much about your species." "I've heard much about yours too," I said carefully. "What can we do for you?" Coral's skin flickered. "I am here to speak about the situation, the unfortunate situation." "You mean the execution of Tessa Chen?" "Yes," Coral's voice was quiet. "I was there, I saw what happened, I have concerns." Marcus gestured for me to sit. "Coral belongs to what we might call the diplomatic corps. They've been studying humanity for the past decade, and they've been trying to warn their own people about what we're capable of." "Is that why you're here?" I asked. "To warn us?" Coral shook its head. "No, I am here because I believe there is a way to prevent what is coming, a way to prevent conflict." "What is coming?" I asked. "What are you talking about?" Marcus and Coral exchanged a look. Then Marcus leaned forward. "There's a human ship en route to this system," he said. "It's not military, it's not diplomatic, it's something else. Something designed specifically for situations like this. A situation where an alien civilization kills one of us." "Yes," Marcus's voice was grim. "The ship's crew is made up of specialists, people who have been trained for one purpose, to teach civilizations like the Xylosians what happens when they harm humanity." "I still don't understand. What are they going to do?" Marcus looked at Coral. The Xylosian's skin had gone a pale, almost translucent white. "They're going to take everything away," Coral said softly. "Everything we value, everything we believe in. They're going to show us that our hierarchies are meaningless, that the universe doesn't work the way we've always thought." "How?" Marcus smiled. "They're going to demonstrate, and the demonstration is going to change everything." That's how long it took for the human ship to arrive in the Xylos system. 3 days of formal receptions, careful conversations, and the slowly growing tension that neither species acknowledged but both species felt. I spent those 3 days learning everything I could about the Xylosians. Coral became my guide, my teacher, my window into a culture that was both fascinating and terrifying. "The hierarchies are not simply a belief," Coral explained one evening as we sat in a garden of impossible plants. "They are the foundation of our existence. Every Xylosian is born into a specific caste. That caste determines everything, your function, your status, your worth." "That seems," I paused, searching for the right word, "limiting." Coral's skin flickered through a pattern I'd learned to recognize as amusement. "Yes, that is how it seems to you, but to us it is comforting. We know our place, we know our purpose. There is no uncertainty, no doubt." But what about choice? I asked. What about freedom? Freedom is a luxury we cannot afford. Coral's voice was earnest. Our civilization exists because we have always understood that the whole is greater than the individual. Each of us is a component of something vast, something ancient. To place individual desires above the needs of the hierarchy would be chaos. Tessa Chen, I said carefully. She didn't understand that. She couldn't. We don't think that way. Coral was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was barely a whisper. I know. That is why I am concerned. Your species. You are everything we fear. You have broken every rule, defied every expectation. You are the chaos we have spent 200,000 years trying to avoid. Then why negotiate with us? Why not just destroy us? Because we tried. Coral looked away. When we first detected your species, we sent ships to observe, to assess. Our military caste wanted to eliminate you before you could become a threat, but we couldn't. Why? Because you are too widespread, too decentralized, too unpredictable. We could destroy 100 of your worlds and you would simply adapt, find new ways to survive, and in the process you would learn things about us that we cannot afford to reveal. I sat back, trying to process what Coral was telling me. The Xylosians had considered genocide and rejected it, not because of morality, but because of practicality. Is that why we're here? I asked. To prove that we're not a threat. To prove that you're not a threat to our hierarchies, Coral corrected. To show us that you can be controlled, fitted into our understanding of the universe. And if we can't? Coral's skin went very still. Then we will have no choice. We will fight you, and we will both lose. The human ship arrived on the 4th day. I was in my quarters when the alert came. A distant hum that built to a low vibration, shaking the floor beneath my feet. Through the window, I could see the sky change, clouds parting, revealing a shape that descended through the atmosphere with impossible grace. It wasn't like any ship I'd ever seen. It was sleek, dark, angular, all sharp lines and dangerous edges. No markings, no insignia, nothing to identify its origin. It simply appeared, hanging in the sky like a blade waiting to fall. Marcus, I called, rushing to the common room. Marcus, there's a ship. I know. He was already at the window watching the vessel descend. It's here. What is it? What's it going to do? That depends. Marcus's voice was calm, almost clinical. It depends on what the Xylosians do next. The city responded to the ship's arrival like a living organism. Xylosians flooded into the streets, their skin patterns frantic, chaotic. I'd never seen them like this, disorganized, uncertain, afraid. They don't know what to do, Marcus said. They've never faced anything like this. A ship that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't follow their protocols, that just arrives. What's going to happen? Marcus turned from the window. They're going to try to establish control, to assert their hierarchy, and then the ship is going to respond in a way they never expected. The Xylosian military response was swift and decisive. Within an hour, hundreds of small craft had surrounded the human ship, their weapons trained on its hull. I watched from the diplomatic center as they arranged themselves in formation, a clear message of dominance and control. And then the human ship did something that made my breath catch in my throat. It emitted a sound. Not a weapon, not a communication, just sound. A deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I felt it in my chest, in my bones, a vibration that seemed to resonate with something fundamental in the universe. The Xylosian craft began to drift. They lost formation, their weapons wavering, their pilots clearly confused. The sound continued, growing stronger, filling the air with a presence that couldn't be ignored. What is that? I asked. Music, Marcus said. Ancient human music, from a time before we even knew what space was. Music, they're attacking with music. No, he smiled. They're showing them something they've never experienced before. The Xylosian leadership convened an emergency session. I watched from an observation gallery as they gathered in the grand hall, their skin patterns a chaotic display of fear and confusion. Vexar stood at the center, its crimson skin flickering with barely controlled rage. "This is unacceptable," Vexar announced. "This ship has violated our space, violated our protocols, threatened our security." "It has done none of those things," Coral said quietly. "It has simply arrived. It has made no threats, fired no weapons, made no demands." "That is the threat," Vexar's voice rose. "The unknown is the threat. This ship represents everything we don't understand about humanity." "Perhaps that is the point," Coral replied. "Perhaps they are showing us what we don't understand." Vexar spun to face Coral, its skin blazing with fury. "You sympathize with them. You have betrayed the hierarchies." "I have observed," Coral said calmly. "I have learned. That is what our caste is supposed to do. I have simply learned more than you wanted me to." The tension in the room was palpable. I could see other Xylosians shifting, their skin patterns revealing their allegiances. There was a divide here, a fracture that had been forming for years. Coral represented something new, something that challenged the ancient certainties of Xylosian culture. "You will be punished for this," Vexar said. "You and all who stand with you." Coral's skin went pale. "You have already punished humanity. You killed one of their own, and now you will learn what that means." The human ship transmitted a message shortly after the emergency session ended. It played through the diplomatic center's communication system, reaching every Xylosian in the city. "Citizens of Xylos," the voice said. It was human, female, calm, but carrying an undertone of steel. "We come in peace. We come with no weapons. We come simply to share a truth that we have learned and that you must also learn." "What truth?" Vexar demanded. "What truth could you possibly teach us?" The voice continued, ignoring the interruption. "You killed one of our kind, a scientist named Tessa Chen. She was not a soldier, not a threat, not a challenge to your hierarchies. She was simply curious. She wanted to understand you, and you killed her for it." "We followed our laws," Vexar said. "The law is absolute, there is no exception." "There is always exception," the voice replied. "That is what you don't understand. There is always a choice, always another path. You chose to kill. Now we choose to teach." "Teach us what?" Vexar's voice was almost a shout. The human ship responded by opening a channel, a visual channel that displayed what I recognized as Earth. It wasn't a picture of a city or a landscape or anything familiar. It was just Earth, spinning slowly in space, blue and beautiful and fragile. "This is our home," the voice said. "This is where we come from, and this is what we want you to understand." The image shifted, showing Earth's surface in more detail. I saw continents, oceans, clouds, and then I saw something else. I saw lights, billions of them, scattered across the dark side of the planet like stars fallen to the ground. "These are our people," the voice continued. "All of them, every single one. We are not a hierarchy. We are not a caste system. We are chaos, and we are proud of it. We have learned to embrace our differences, to celebrate our contradictions, to find strength in our diversity." The image shifted again, showing humans in every situation imaginable working, playing, loving, fighting, building, destroying, creating, mourning. It was overwhelming, a tapestry of emotion and experience that defied easy understanding. "You find this chaotic," the voice said. "You find it threatening, but we find it beautiful, and we want you to understand that we will not let you destroy it." "We don't want to destroy anything," Vexar said. "We only want order, harmony, structure." "At what cost?" the voice asked. "How many Tessa Chens will you kill to maintain your order? How many lives will you sacrifice to preserve your harmony?" Vexar was silent. The Xylosians around it shifted uncomfortably. I could see the doubt spreading through them, the cracks forming in their ancient certainties. We killed one, Vexar said finally. One human, we made a mistake. We are willing to apologize. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again, and there was something new in its tone, something that sounded almost like sorrow. We don't want your apology. We want you to understand, to truly understand. And the only way to do that is to show you what we've experienced. The image on the screen changed again. This time, it showed something I recognized: the diplomatic center where we stood, the streets outside, the Zalosians going about their daily business. And then it showed the execution platform, with Tessa Chen standing on it. Wait, I said, what is this? When did they record this? Marcus put a hand on my arm. Watch, he said quietly. The recording showed Tessa Chen being led to the platform. Her hands were bound behind her back, but she walked with her head high, refusing to show fear. The Zalosian executioner stood before her, its skin a deep, impersonal gray. By the authority of the hierarchies, the executioner said, you are sentenced to death for violating our laws. Do you have any last words? Tessa looked directly at the recording device. Her face was calm, serene, almost peaceful. I have only one thing to say, she said. You're making a mistake, not because you're wrong about the laws, but because you're wrong about us. You're wrong about what we are and what we're capable of. And what are you capable of? The executioner asked. Tessa smiled. We're capable of forgiving. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. Forgiving, the human voice said. That was her last word. She told you that we are capable of forgiving, and she was right. We are. Vexar's skin had gone completely still. What are you saying? We're saying that we forgive you. That one human, on her last day, looked at the beings who were about to kill her and told them they were capable of more, capable of seeing what she saw. But we killed her, Vexar said. We executed her, And we forgive you. We forgive you because we understand that you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't understand who you were killing, but now you do. The image on the screen shifted one more time. It showed the surface of Earth, millions of people gathered together, holding signs and flags. I recognized some of the words: justice for Tessa. We are all Tessa. Forgiveness is strength. This is not a threat, the voice said. This is not a demand. This is simply a statement. You killed one of us and we forgive you, because that's who we are, that's what we believe. Not in vengeance, not in hierarchy, not in control, but in forgiveness. The transmission ended. The days that followed were the strangest of my life. The Zalosians didn't know how to respond. They had prepared for anger, for vengeance, for war. They had not prepared for forgiveness. Vexar retreated to its private chambers and refused to see anyone. The other leaders of the hierarchy scrambled to maintain control, but the cracks in their society were widening. Zalosians who had never questioned the system before were suddenly asking questions. Zalosians who had always accepted their place in the hierarchy were suddenly wondering if there was another way. Coral became my constant companion. We walked through the city together, watching the changes unfolding. They're confused, Coral said one afternoon. They don't understand. You humans have done something we never expected. You've broken our assumptions. Is that a bad thing? Coral's skin flickered with something like amusement. For us? No, for the hierarchies. Yes, they can't function without certainty. They need to believe that the universe is ordered, predictable, hierarchical. You've shown them that it's not. What happens now? That depends on them. Coral gestured toward the streets below. Look at them. They're trying to understand. They're trying to fit what you've shown them into their existing framework, and they're failing. I looked down at the crowds below. Zalosians were gathered in small groups, their skin patterns in constant motion. They were speaking in hushed tones, their body language hesitant, uncertain. They're afraid, I said. Yes, they're afraid because they don't know what comes next. For 200,000 years, they've believed that the hierarchies were the only way. Now they're learning that there might be another path. Is that a good thing? Coral was silent for a long moment. I don't know, it admitted. I don't know if we can change. I don't know if we even want to. A week passed. The human ship remained in orbit, silent and patient. The Zalosians tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it wasn't there, tried to return to their routines, but nothing was the same. I noticed changes in the way Zalosians interacted with each other. There was more hesitation, more uncertainty. They spoke more slowly, more carefully, as if testing each word before releasing it. Marcus and I continued our formal duties, attending receptions and meetings, but the atmosphere had shifted. The Zalosians no longer looked at us with cold assessment. Now they looked at us with curiosity, need, as if we held answers to questions they hadn't known they had. One evening we were summoned to a private meeting with Vexar. The Crimson Zalosian seemed diminished, its skin dull, its posture slumped. "Senior Diplomat Webb," it said, "I have requested this meeting because I need to understand something." "Anything," Marcus said. "We're here to help." "I need to understand why." Vexar's voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you forgive us? We killed one of your people. We killed her in the most public way possible. We humiliated her, destroyed her, and you forgave us." Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Because that's who we are," he said. "That's what Tessa Chen wanted us to show you. We're not like you. We don't operate on hierarchies. We operate on connections." Connections between individuals, between communities, between worlds. We believe that every life has value, every individual matters. And we believe that even the worst mistakes can be forgiven if the person who made them is willing to learn. Vexar's skin flickered with something I'd never seen before, a pattern that looked almost like tears. "I killed her," it said. "I signed the order. I thought I was protecting the hierarchies, protecting our way of life, but I was just wrong." "Yes," Marcus said, "you were wrong, but that doesn't mean you can't change." "How?" Vexar asked. "How can I change after what I've done?" Marcus reached out and placed a hand on Vexar's arm. The Zalosian flinched, but didn't pull away. "You start by forgiving yourself," he said, "and then you start building something new." The process of change was slow, painful, and uncertain. The hierarchies didn't collapse overnight. They couldn't. 200,000 years of tradition couldn't be undone in a single moment. But the process had begun. Coral became a leader in the movement for reform. Zalosians who had once been content with their place in the hierarchy began to question, to demand, to dream of something different. The lower castes, who had always been told they were lesser, began to realize that they might be more. "They're not ready," Coral told me one evening. "They want to change, but they don't know how. They've never had to think for themselves." "Then teach them," I said. "That's what we did. That's what we've always done." Coral looked at me with those black, unreadable eyes. "You're so sure of yourselves, so confident in your way of doing things." "We've made mistakes," I said. "We've made terrible mistakes, but we've always learned from them. That's what makes us who we are." "And that's what you want for us?" I nodded. "We want you to have the choice. The freedom to make your own mistakes and learn from them, not to be trapped in a system that doesn't allow for growth." Coral's skin shifted through a rapid sequence of colors. "I think I understand," it said. "I think I'm beginning to understand what you've been trying to teach us." "What's that?" "That the universe is bigger than we thought. That there are more possibilities than we imagined. And that maybe, just maybe, there's a way forward that doesn't require us to be what we've always been." Months passed. The human ship remained, but it was no longer a threat. It had become something else, a symbol of what was possible, a reminder that the universe held more than the Zalosians had ever imagined. The reforms came slowly, incrementally. Vexar resigned from its position and dedicated itself to the cause of change. Coral became the public face of the movement, traveling from city to city, speaking to anyone who would listen. The hierarchies were still there, but they were fading. Zalosians were beginning to think for themselves, to question what they'd been told, to imagine a different future. I stayed on Xylos 7 longer than I'd planned. There was too much to see, too much to learn. Every day brought new discoveries, new insights, new connections. "You've become part of us," Coral said one day. "You're no longer just a visitor, you're one of us." "I'm still human," I said. "I'll always be human." "Yes," Coral agreed. "That's what makes you valuable. You show us what we could be if we were willing to change." "I'm not trying to make you into us," I said. "I'm trying to help you become more of yourselves." Coral's skin flickered with amusement. "That's very diplomatic of you." "I learned from the best," I smiled. "Marcus taught me everything I know." Marcus left eventually. Called back to Earth for new assignments. We said goodbye at the landing platform where I'd first arrived, surrounded by the guards who no longer seemed threatening. "Take care of them," he said. "They're going to need guidance." "They have Coral," I said, "and they have themselves." Marcus nodded. "That's all anyone needs. Well done, observer." He boarded the shuttle and was gone. I watched until the ship vanished into the amber clouds, then turned and walked back into the city. The years that followed were the most meaningful of my life. I stayed on Xylos 7, serving as a liaison between our two civilizations. The Xylosians rebuilt their society, not overnight but day by day, step by step. It was messy, chaotic, painful, and it was wonderful. The lower castes were elevated. The old restrictions were lifted. Xylosians who had never been allowed to choose their own path suddenly had options. They made mistakes, of course. They were only learning, but they learned from them. "I never imagined this," Coral told me one evening. We were sitting in the garden where we'd first spoken, surrounded by impossible plants. "I never imagined we could be free." "Freedom is scary," I said. "It's easier to be told what to do." "Yes," Coral's skin flickered with something like nostalgia. "But it's also better to choose, even when the choices are hard." "That's what I've been trying to tell you." Coral turned to face me, its black eyes unreadable. "I know, and that's why I want to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us what we could be. For not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." I reached out and placed my hand on Coral's arm. "You were worth it," I said. "You were always worth it." Looking back on it all, I realized that we taught the Xylosians the most important lesson of all, not that they were wrong, but that they were capable of being right. They killed a human, that was their mistake, but they learned from it, they changed, they grew, they became something better. And that's the lesson we want the universe to learn. Civilizations that kill humans don't survive. Not because we're cruel, not because we're vindictive, but because our death teaches them something. It shows them what they've lost, what they've destroyed, what they've failed to understand. Tessa Chen died, but her death changed the Xylosians forever. Her forgiveness, her compassion, her last words echoed through their history like a promise of what could be. Maybe that's who we are. Maybe that's what we're meant to be. The teachers, the forgivers, the ones who show the universe that there's another way. I don't know, I'm just one person telling one story. But I know what I saw. I know what I experienced. And I know that the last civilization that killed a human became a lesson that the universe will never forget. I returned to Earth eventually. A different person with different eyes, a different understanding of the universe. I visit Tessa Chen's grave sometimes, a simple marker in a quiet cemetery. The inscription reads, "She taught us that even in death there is forgiveness." I leave flowers, earth flowers, not the impossible plants of Xylos 7, and I think about what I learned, what I saw, what I became. We are not the strongest species in the universe. We are not the oldest, the wisest, or the most powerful, but we are the ones who forgive. We are the ones who teach. We are the ones who show that there is always another way. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all we need to be. I walk away from the grave, into the sunlight, into the future. And I carry with me the lesson that the last civilization that killed a human learned, that there is always hope, always redemption, always a chance to become something more. That's the lesson, that's the truth, and that's what I'll carry with me always forever.